Hi, I am Kushank Arora. In this session, we will dive into the technicalities of C language. अभी तक हमें प्रोग्रामिंग के बारे में तो पता लग ही गया है, but we could not know much more about C. तो इस सेशन में I will try to introduce you to the programming where you could write programs and show your mates the miracles of this new world. But मैं ये प्रेफर करता हूँ कि पहले ABC सीखें और फिर उससे वर्ड्स और सेंटेंसेस बनाएं. So I will let you know the basics of the language and then we will write a small code. So starting with the first topic, the first step in C. I call this session the longest step क्योंकि भाई स्टार्ट करना सबसे मुश्किल होता है. एक बार स्टार्ट हो जाए then आगे सब कुछ बहुत ही ज़्यादा आसान है. So I will give my best to ease your first step. So we know what programming is. Programming is when we want a computer to do something for us and we can make it understand the task in its language. And programming in C matlab we will talk in C. And computer will understand C? No. Unfortunately, computer does not know C. We had learned in the last lesson that the computer only understands machine language. But then what is the use of C? It has a godly man called compiler who helps convert the C language to the machine language. It sounds like compiler is something like a assembler, which we had learned in the last lesson. So we need to be clear about their meanings. In the assembly language, we have specified words called mnemonics. We need to do all our work using these mnemonics only. The mnemonics are easily convertible to the machine language. Hence, the conversion is fast. Since the mnemonics are two basic elements, thus to do a task, we need to write lots of statements and we need to remember different mnemonics. Instead, in a compiler, we have instructions which are closer to English language, like if you are happy, then subscribe to my channel, or while you are learning C, don't forget to remember my name. We don't use such exact sentences, but our code revolves around this. Technically, compiler does a lot of checks on the code, and after the code is completely right, it links the program to some other stuff and then converts it into an executable, which is directly understood by the computer with no further processing. Thus, although the internal processing is lengthy, it is very easy to code. In C, we think of the logic and try to frame it in a systematic English, and then it could be easily converted to the code. That's why the type of programming we do in C is called functional programming. The major part of the executable generated after compilation is the machine code, and the rest is metadata, that is, data to understand the actual data. Since C is a language, it has its own alphabet and grammar, and with its help, we can create sentences and convey our intentions easily. The name of our next topic is too vague. It is input output. It is kept so to make it more general one. भाई देखो, सी में हमें एट लास्ट प्रोग्राम्स बनाने हैं, उससे कुछ काम करवाना है. लास्ट सेशन में मैंने बताया था दैट वी विल वर्क ऑन सम ब्लैक स्क्रीन. अभी हम उस पे ही बात करेंगे. सो यू कैन सिंपली ओपन द कमांड प्रॉम्प्ट इन विंडोज by pressing Windows plus R and then typing CMD and then click OK, or open the console in Mac accordingly. अब बताओ कि what all can we do to convey something to this black screen? You cannot simply talk to this black screen because it won't hear you. You cannot ask it to see you because she can't see you. And neither can you make him feel anything. What you can do is simply type. Type something with the help of the keyboard. That is the type of input we will deal with. But for now, let us consider that rather than dealing with CMD, what if I open Microsoft Word or Paint or browser? What then? There also we convey our intentions with the computer by sometimes recording our voice or sometimes clicking something using the mouse like this. You can make a very nice scenery in paint using clicks. Though I am not very good in painting, but still you can do something like that. And these are also different type of input which can be easily dealt with using C. And for doing that in Windows, you will have to learn Windows programming after learning basics of C. But in this session, what we will do is giving input with the keyboard only. And what about the output? Is black screen way you should not expect something other than text. No audio, no video, nothing. Except a small exception that you can play an alert voice on some computers. Other than that, there is nothing other than text. So, in C, we are going to deal with a lot of texts. So, by now हमें एहसास हो गया है कि हमें किसके साथ काम करना पड़ेगा, which is only text. And since it is ought to be meaningful, therefore it is called data. If you see a text with all your creativity, it is not just a text. It could be something more. Like some texts are just numbers and the others are sentences. So we first classify our text into numbers and non-numbers. That is rest of the text. Does it look good? Oh, I'm sorry, I misplaced one thing. Now it is right. It is so because of that wicked comma. This is good so far. But now we need to even classify these further. Numbers can be classified into two types as even odd or prime non-prime or positive negative. But C chose the classification to be something like decimal point and non-decimal point numbers. That is non-integers and integers, or you can even say it as decimal point numbers and integers. But C calls it floating point numbers and integers. C called decimal point numbers as floating point number because number of digits before and after the decimal point is not fixed. If it had been fixed, then the name would rather be fixed point numbers. But now it is floating point numbers. And the text is classified as characters and combination of characters which is called string. Wait, combination of characters and star hash 1010 hash is classified as a string. Hence, 1 and 0 should also be a character. And so it is. Therefore, a single character could be a letter of English alphabet or a symbol or even a digit. Remember the difference between a digit and a number. A number is a combination of digits and string is a combination of any number of characters. Thus, 32464 also be a string and 3.14 should also be a string and 7 and 32464 could also be an integer and 3.14 which is a floating point number could also be a string. So much ambiguity. So we have a proper syntax for all these types. An integer is represented by the combination of one or more digits without any decimal point or special symbols like comma. Therefore, 12,000 separated by a comma is an invalid integer and 3.0 is also an invalid integer, but 12,003 are valid integers. Similarly, a floating point number is represented by the combination of one or more digits with a single decimal point and no other special symbol. Therefore, 12,000.23 where we have a comma in between is invalid floating point number, but 12,000.23 is a valid floating point number. A floating point number can also be represented in scientific form, that is using small e or capital E for exponent. Therefore, a floating point number can also be represented by the combination of one or more digits with or without a decimal point and followed by the capital E or small e character and an integer representing the power base 10. Therefore, 1.2e4 and 12E3 are valid floating point numbers representing 12,000. A character is represented by a single character in single quote. Therefore, a capital A is a valid character if written in single quotes. And now 1 is an integer and 1 in single quotes is a character. I have marked a star on single character because we have a special case in that, which we will learn shortly. The last type was string. It is represented by 0 or more characters in double quotes. Therefore, Kushank dash Aurora is a valid string. But Taj Mahal in single quotes is not valid because there are no double quotes. But if there are double quotes, then it is valid. And now 1 is an integer. If it is written in single quotes, it is a character. And if written in double quotes, it is a string. So now, as a conclusion for this topic, we have learned 4 types of data, namely integers, floating point numbers, characters, and strings. Now we know about data. We will learn about getting the data through the keyboard in the next session. But in this one, we will learn how to print it on the screen. Printing refers to displaying things on that black screen. But we have a problem, a more problem. The problem is we don't know how to print on black screen. Should we learn a more language for that? Obviously not. Imagine that if I start talking in Spanish and whatever I am saying is of utmost importance to you, then how will you understand me? Obviously, with the help of a dictionary. The dictionary will tell you the meaning for each word I speak. Similarly, in C, if C does not know something, we will get a dictionary and give that dictionary to C, and then we can do our task normally. Therefore, to print something, we will provide a dictionary to C, which will let the C know how to print. These dictionaries has a more technical name, that is header files. Header files stores implementation, that is meaning of things which we require and C does not know implicitly. The header file which stores the procedure for printing is stdio.h. It stands for standard input output. There are many other header files for printing, but for now we will use this one. We got the dictionary. Now our next task is to give that dictionary to C, which is done with the statement hash include. It means that C should include the specified header file because it could be required in the program. And the proper syntax for hash include is hash include, then we have to write the name of the header file in the angular bracket. In our case, we have to use a header file for output. We use stdio.h like this. Now we are finally ready to write our first C program. We will write a customary program which is the first program for most of the programmers, and it is to print hello world. Since we need to print, that means to output, we will have to use the header file stdio.h using the include statement. Next, we will have to make a string which will say hello world, and then we will have to print it. Printing in C is very simple. It is done by a robot named printf. Basically, it is not a robot but a function. We will learn the technical words afterwards. For now, we have someone named printf to help us print. We have different meaning for different type of brackets in C. Therefore, just to be clear, this thing is called parenthesis, this one is called square brackets, and these are called curly braces. Now let us open code blocks. Now let us create a new file by clicking file, new, in an empty file for now. You can save it by clicking file and then save file. You can save it with the name first program.c and then click save. If the program requires a header file, then the program will start by including those header file. So our program will begin with hash include angular bracket open stdio.h. It was a header file used for doing output. Then we have two lines which are ought to be written for now. We will understand its meaning in detail as we go forward in the session. Our whole program will land between these two curly braces. For our current problem of printing hello world, we will use the statement printf. To print a simple string, it is used like this. And in our case, it is like this. So let me write it in the program. Printf hello world and a semicolon. Most of the statements in C are ended by a semicolon. We will learn by practice where to use semicolon and where not to use it. So our whole program looks like this. You can compile and run it simultaneously using this third icon, which is build and run. And here is our output. It is saying hello world and two lines which are customary in code blocks. It won't appear in other compilers, in other IDEs, I should say. So ignore the last two sentences, but this thing, the first line, is the main part of it. It is the output of a program. It is printing hello world. So let us come back to a slide. It was a very simple program, so I want you guys to try different things with this program and keep a note of what happens so that you could stay a step forward from the others. It is just a suggestion, but you ought to do things which are highly required. These are some programs which you should complete after the end of this video and before starting the next session. There are also some interesting questions for you based on the sessions so far. There are some more questions and few more. Try to do these questions by yourself without the help of internet. You would love these and you will learn a bit more after doing these questions. If you like this video, please press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.